Hello folks, I hope that you're having just a great day today and keeping yourself safe. Today I want to look at another story in the Cthulhu Mythos. It's by Many Wade Wellman. It's his only story in the Cthulhu Mythos, although a lot of his later works in his life have a sort of mythos feel to them. But this story, The Terrible Parchment, is his only story that he's actually written for you that's actually in the mythos proper. It was published in 1937 in Weird Tales magazine, and it was published just shortly after H.P. Lovecraft died, and it was written as a sort of an homage to H.P. Lovecraft and set in the mythos as well. And my copy of this story, The Terrible Parchment, which is 5 pages long, is in this collection of all of Many Wade Wellman's fantasy and horror stuff, of course, over the course of his career. Many Wade Wellman is somebody who is a pulp hero. He lived the life of a pulp hero, and his name is the name of a pulp hero. That is not a pseudonym or anything like that. There are some online copies of this, but they are... the ones that I found have been edited or have problems with them. The links that I found, so I'll actually link you to this collection so you can just check it out and read it in sort of its original format. So unfortunately, the free ones that are available online just have some issues with them after I did some research on this story for you. Many Wade Wellman was born in Africa, the son of a doctor. He was adopted by a local chief. He traveled Europe in an early age. He went to a high-profile school. He studied a lot of different things from music to writing and a number of other things as well. He became kind of known as this voice of Appalachia. He lived in the Carolinas as an adult, and he would adapt a lot of the local Appalachian and Carolina flair into his stories and his horror works. My favorite story of his is Frog Father, which I've reviewed for you. And I've reviewed a few stories of you by Many Wade Wellman. His first story was published in Weird Tales in 1925 when he was still in grad school after he submitted an unusual horror story that was strange to his teacher, and his teacher said that this was unpublishable. And so he sent it out, and it got published with Farnsworth Wright over at Weird Tales. And so he became a Weird Tales writer. And he was a bigger one, too. He was somebody who was incredibly well gifted, incredibly well talented, and a pulp author who survived the pulp era by continuing to publish short stories in science fiction and fantasy stuff. He wrote a lot of horror, a lot of science fiction, a lot of fantasy. This work in particular is the first one in the Cthulhu Mythos to do something. And we'll talk about that at the end of my sort of review for you. But let's start with the synopsis. Now, it's only 5 pages long in my admittedly giant collection. I went ahead and reread it for you today. This is the second time I've actually read the story for you because I wanted it to be fresh in my mind. What's going to end up happening is that we're going to have our main character, and our main character's copy of Weird Tales that he gets on the first of each month has come a couple of days early near the end of the previous month. His wife brings it to him. She purchased it for him to read. He looks over the copy of it, and out from it falls this parchment. The parchment appears to be something of a very unusual nature. It's not paper. It appears to be some sort of a reptilian skin that they can't identify. It has a great age on it. It has some writing in Arabic. It has some writing on the top of it in Greek. And when they interpret the Greek, it reads Necronomicon. The parchment itself looks to be incredibly old, incredibly evocative of some details. There is a bottom at the end that's in Latin, according to his wife. His wife has difficulty translating, but basically says something to the effect of, if you read what this says in Arabic, then it will be released. As to what it's referring to, we don't know. Then later on, the parchment will start to change, and what was originally written in Arabic will start to change to English, and they'll both be able to start reading it. That's about 1.5 pages into the 5-page story, so I'll actually hold you on to it. What is written on the parchment? What ends up happening? Those are the questions I'll leave for you because again, it's just 5 pages long. So I'll go ahead and leave the synopsis to you. Many Wade Wellman, if you've never read him before, is an incredibly evocative writer from the pulp era. He's like a lot of fellow writers in the pulp era. He has a love of adjectives, and he'll use them pretty well here in this horror piece for the Terrible Parchment. It does have sort of an air of comedy to it, as well as sort of a dark comedy, if you will. Throughout the piece, I do like it. I think it's a 7 out of 10. I think it's well written and cleverly done. Now, here's what it does for the first time in the Cthulhu Mythos. This is the first time in the Cthulhu Mythos where we will see a very, very common trope. And that common trope is the things that H.P. Lovecraft wrote about and H.P. Lovecraft himself actually exist. H.P. Lovecraft actually existed as a writer. He wrote about these things, but what was dismissed as just mere story writing actually exists, and we find out that it exists during the course of the story. This happens in a lot of great stories. T.E. Decline's Black Man with a Horn, for example, will do this very well. It's one of my favorite Cthulhu Mythos stories in the Generation 4. It's written in the early 80s. There are a number of other stories that will do this too. Kim Newman does this. A lot of big name writers will do this, and you'll regularly read at least 1 or 2 or 3 stories in most collections in the Mythos from generations 2, 3, and 4 after Lovecraft died, where this idea that Lovecraft actually existed, weird tales actually existed, these stories actually existed, they were dismissed as just mere writing, but in fact there is a truth to the matter, and that truth of the matter will be discovered during the course of this upcoming story. And Many Wade Wellman introduces this. He does it in Generation 1. He's a contemporary of H.P. Lovecraft. He does it in Weird Tales in 1937, just a couple of months after Lovecraft does, as an homage to the man's career, and out of a love for him. So that's kind of the Terrible Parchment for you, and how it was actually pretty influential in the mythos. Now, I don't know if a lot of people who have done that sort of played into that genre have read the Terrible Parchment and would credit the Terrible Parchment, so it might just be the example of that rather than the most influential story that plays into that subgenre of mythos writing. But again, it is the first one that I found for you. I really enjoy bringing to you these sorts of firsts for you, and there you are. So again, I'll link you to it in the comments below. Have you read the Terrible Parchment? What did you think of it? Did you agree or disagree with anything here in my comments? I'd be happy to discuss that with you further in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please feel encouraged to hit that subscribe button. There's going to be so many more of these to follow. And finally, I just want to thank you for taking some time and watching my video. We all have so many things happening in our lives, right? So the fact that you spent this time with me is incredibly humbling, and I really do appreciate it. So thanks again, and have a great day.